This podcast discusses themes of mental health, which some people may find emotive, such as suicide or other adult-themed content. The information contained in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. All views expressed are solely those of individuals involved and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which we have been, are now, or will be affiliated. The information is not meant to diagnose or treat any mental health condition. If you're experiencing mental health symptoms, we encourage you to contact a mental health service within your community. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek the relevant support and interventions by presenting to your local accident and emergency department or contacting the relevant emergency services.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Welcome to The Man Hug, the monthly men's mental health podcast. I'm Dean McShane.
I'm Dan Cooper. I'm Ian Pearce-Hayes.
And I'm Conleth Kelly.
Each month we will discuss a different topic related to men's mental health, which will include a guest speaker who will discuss their own personal story. And each month we will also be showcasing an organisation or charity within the Merseyside area who work within mental health to help build your signposting skills. Welcome to the Man Hug. We have another excellent topic in line up on this month's podcast, with this month's theme being all about happiness. We're really excited to be joined by two more amazing guests. In a moment, we'll be chatting with Dr Sice, and later on, we will be at Liverpool Lake with Mark from the Mental Health Project, Fish in the Mind. That's something I never thought I'd say, but there we go. But first up, we're joined by singer, songwriter, psychologist and author Dr Sice, Simon Rowbottom, who many of you will know from Merseyside band, the Boo Radleys. Sice, thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome, it's a pleasure.
And also, we went to watch the Boo Radleys last night in the Academy, and we did get a little bit giddy when you gave the Man Hug a shout out. Yeah. So thank you very much. I know you made Dan's year, and those screams you could hear were Dan's. So people will know your music, but not many people might know that you are a doctor of psychotherapeutic psychology. So just tell us a little bit about your story of how someone goes from rock and roll to adding this career to along the way.
Yeah. So, I always wanted to be a musician. I always kind of felt that was, where happiness lay. Yeah. It was always kind of, ever since I saw Top of the Pops and saw people on there and they looked so happy and contented that I thought, God, that's the way. So, worked really, really hard, and I kind of got there, did it. But then it kind of all ended in about 2000. Yeah, 2000 was when it kind of split up. And I was okay for a while because I decided to be a stay-at-home dad, which, although it had its own challenges, it was kind of really gratifying. It was really nice. But then sort of 2005, 2006, I really started to struggle because that was the time that I kind of thought, okay, I've got to do something else in my life here. My kids were going to school. And that was where I kind of felt really kind of lost. And I think looking back, I was probably quite depressed, quite scared. So I went to therapy myself. And that was really, really helpful. That kind of helped shape things. And from that, I kind of thought, well, actually, I really like this. I'm interested in psychology. Why don't I do that? And it was a long road, really. I mean, I hadn't done, because of the music thing, I hadn't done my first degree. So I went back while I was still looking after my kids. I went back, did the first degree. And then went back and did a doctorate, another 3-year doctorate, which actually took 4 years because in the final year of the doctorate, I actually had a kind of major breakdown. And then when I kind of got well again, finished the course. And then since then, that was about 2013, 2014. So I worked in the NHS for a year and decided actually I think I was better suited to private practice. So since then, I've been involved in private practice, and really my life has been I wasn't really involved with music for a lot of that until the last maybe 2 or 3 years, when the music part started to come back in. I've started to play with the Boo Radleys. I also work with an organisation called the Music MITC, so Music Industry Therapists Collective. So we're an organisation of people who've worked in the music business and become therapists. So that's really kind of how it's worked now. And now I kind of balance my life between the two. I did I think I did a one-man show this year called The Secret of Happiness. Which kind of tries to bring the two things together, the music and the psychology. So that's really where I am at the moment, really. Yeah.
It's really fascinating. One of the things that I just kind of wanted to jump on now was that period where you said, I felt like I was depressed. How did you what was the realisation for that? How did you know, looking into it?
It's really, this is a really, really important thing, I think, because I think like a lot of men, I didn't really know. And what it actually took was my wife saying, you're not right. This is not you. You're unmotivated, and you kind of, I think a lot of it was depression, but a lot of it was fear as well. Yeah. A lot of it was anxiety. A lot of it was because the only thing I'd ever known was music, and doing something different, going out into the world and doing something different was actually really frightening, and I didn't realise that. So I was kind of stuck in this cycle of not achieving, not doing anything. And so I think it was what was really important, and I think what I've learned about my mental health is to listen to other people, especially my wife. If she says to me now, you're getting a bit bad tempered, I used to say, no, I'm not, I'm fine, but now it's kind of, okay, if I'm getting a bit bad tempered, that means I'm getting a bit overstressed. Maybe it's time to take a bit of time off work. Maybe it's time to take things a bit easier. So I think listening to other people was really vital. Yeah.
It's amazing advice, isn't it? And you're able to use your own reflection through that. How much do you think, having number one albums and playing to huge crowds and achieving, I suppose, what kind of, was a lifetime goal for you, how much do you think that impacts on your mental health when you then go back to the day job of,
Well, yeah, this is a very, very important thing. I think that really we cover in the Music Industry Therapist Collective, because there's a couple of things there. I think one is just how stressful that lifestyle is. It does appear, from the outside, it looks amazing, and some of it is. This is the thing, some of it is, but actually the lifestyle that you lead as a traveling musician is really, really stressful. The lack of sleep, the constant, you never get your kind of safety system activated because you're constantly meeting new people, you're constantly doing new things, so you're always kind of on edge. So there's that, but then absolutely, I think this is one of the big things that actually a huge amount of musicians will struggle with, is that you have your day in the sun, if you will, and then that's always been your identity, and you take a lot of worth from that, and then suddenly, inevitably, that goes. And I think it happens to everybody, even people like Liam Gallagher and stuff, watch the documentary on him, and you go through that period where Oasis had finished, BDI had finished, and people are kind of like, what am I without this acclaim, adulation, who am I? And I think it's a really, really tough time for a lot of musicians and a lot of people, that they then have to kind of rebuild an identity almost of kind of, who am I without that identity? And it can be a real struggle. It can be a real struggle for a lot of people.
So it's a really interesting point. And I think the way I was kind of looking as well was, I've been in bands, but I've only played to certain numbers of people, not like in the thousands, not your Glastonbury crowds, but you always come off, and that high is there for maybe a couple of days, you're absolutely buzzing off it. But as a musician, who's got that bigger success, how much does that impact on you mentally, the next few days where you're coming down and you are back at home looking after the kids or things, Well, a big part of it is really kind of, that adrenaline high is a huge problem, because basically what tends to happen is that you can't sleep. That's one of the biggest things, is that you're doing this day after day, and part of the problem is that actually you need something to help you sleep. Most of the time it's alcohol. Most of the time people turn to alcohol. Balancing the two has become
easier, I think, as I've got older, because I think because we're more mature now. I think when you're younger, I think it's a lot harder. We kind of, now we have other, I wouldn't say, we all in the Boo Radleys all have different jobs, all have different careers. So we just really enjoy the kind of process of this, rather than kind of, oh, how many people are here, or are we successful? It's just like, we actually love just being on stage playing. Back in the day, the thing about it was that it was actually hard to enjoy that, because you were always kind of thinking, what's next? Are we playing bigger stadiums? Why are they selling more than us? Why can we do this? So you were never really in the moment. You never really enjoyed it. There was always that pressure to do something else. Now it's a lot easier, because it's just like, well, we just do it for the love of it. We don't have to do this. We do it because we love it, and that makes it so much better.
Amazing. And so just on that, do you find it like therapeutic for yourself now?
Massively.
After going through that,
Massively. It's really strange that, because looking back in the day, I don't think, of course there were times within gigs that I did really enjoy it, but everything else around it felt different when it was, for want of a better word, it was a career. And it was like, you were always worried that it could, there were so many things that could stop at any moment. I mean, you just didn't know. At some point, record label might drop you, next record, if it doesn't do so well, it's like, is it going to stop? So, there was always that level of threat around it. Now it's a lot easier, because it's like, well, it's no money in it anyway. So it's just about
You've got
enjoyment.
the security of your job as well. So,
exactly.
that makes it so
it.
much more pleasurable than the stress of knowing that if you don't sell this amount of tickets, then
Completely.
it's all going to go pear-shaped. So,
amazing. So you mentioned before about your one-man show, Secret of Happiness, which we came to see, and we absolutely loved it. Just tell us a little bit about this project, and for anyone who doesn't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, what this is, so, I mean, it's a couple of things. One of the things is that I wanted to sort of bring together the musician and the psychologist. But really what it is, in essence, is psychoeducation. I think because, in my work as a therapist, a lot of the stuff that we talk about is a lot of the kind of normalising, normalising difficult feelings, normalising certain problems, normalizing cognitive biases that we have, a lot of this stuff. And I kind of think, actually, what we need to do, or certainly what I feel in the kind of psychology, mental health industry, is this kind of preventative thing that we do. With physical health, the NHS, a lot of it's more about preventative. With anti-smoking drives and obesity campaigns, and I kind of think the same thing should happen psychologically. And so the Secret of Happiness is really, I mean, the sort of the conceit of it is that me trying to find happiness and what I kind of discovered along the way and the things that I've read. But a lot of it is kind of psychoeducation around emotions, around our own feelings, around theoretical concepts around therapy, these kind of things. So, and hopefully it's entertaining as well. That's one of the things that I kind of want to do, because obviously, understandably, mental health is one of those things that is difficult. But actually, when we're kind of talking about the things that make it up, we can actually be entertaining, we can actually be interesting. A lot of the reason why I love psychology is that, it's absolutely fascinating, fascinated by people. So that's really so it brings in all kind of as many aspects as I can kind of jam into a couple of hours of psychology and mental health, really. So,
and as a mental health lecturer, I'm always looking for like ways where my students will remember something, and I come away, I was talking to the lad, said, oh, that bit where he had the cave girl.
Yeah.
I was like, it's so clever, because people are just going to remember that, because everyone kind of knows about fight or flight, but do they really understand it to the modern day, which is, you do so well, it's incredible.
That really is an awful lot of that really, if I was going to say is the bottom line, is that thing about, so much that we've kind of inherited over, 2 million years of kind of evolutionary development has left us ill-equipped for what we now experience every day. Robert Sapolsky's work on kind of neuroendocrinology and stress is just incredible, because he sort of shows how just the modern world of meeting new people is actually really stressful for us. The very fact that if you go on the tube or you walk down a shopping centre or whatever, those new people, we're not made for that. We were made for small little tribes that you didn't meet strangers very often. And so, all these kind of things that show what happens to our stress systems and how that then affects mental health is massively important. I mean, it's helped me enormously. It's helped me. What it really does is give us a sense of self-compassion. I think that it's kind of like being able to say to myself, well, of course I feel like this. Of course I feel like this because I'm just a dumb caveman, with kind of all these biases. So of course I feel anxious here. Of course I feel angry here. And it just gives that sense of self-compassion.
Amazing. And the work that you do, when you're doing your sort of work in a private setting now, what types of men are you working with? Is there certain backgrounds of conditions or?
It's really interesting actually, because one of the things that I think a lot of the times I've noticed. Sorry, I noticed, and I've never counted up how many men I have. As opposed to how many women I have. And I did do this a couple of months ago, and I was really surprised because it was about 70% male. Nice. So I think a lot of the time there are different issues. There are, I will work with issues like OCD, people going through burnouts, but also things, the reason why I like private practice is that I'll work with divorces, I'll work with identity, sense of identity. I'll also work with people about improvement. People people who run their own businesses wanted to know how they can be more effective, those kind of things. So it's quite a wide range. But I have noticed over the years that I have built up quite a lot of men. And I think what's really helpful is a lot of the time working with men, it's that modelling thing. I think it's that modelling of emotions, which I tend to do. It's that kind of modelling that I'm okay with emotions. I'm okay with talking about, the fact I've had major breakdowns, the fact I struggle. And I think that's really helpful for a lot of men, I think.
Definitely. I've always found as well, from like my mental health nurse background, some of the best mental health nurses and practitioners I've ever worked with have had lived experience themselves. They've either really struggled with their own mental health, have been a service user themselves, or they've got a close family member, for example, with a diagnosis. Are you finding the same thing yourself, with having so much personal experience,
completely.
How relatable it is in your own work?
Well, it's completely, and it's so bizarre for me because I kind of had two perspectives. I kind of almost had two trainings because, like I say, I did my first and second year of training, which were obviously sort of, I'd had struggles but never quite so bad. So I had a certain perspective. But then in the third year, when I really, really struggled and had a complete breakdown, when I came back to the training, it really gave me a massively different perspective. I mean, I wouldn't be the therapist that I am without that, because, and it's actually, so I do think that personal experience is actually really important. I mean, I think it's got to be incorporated with a kind of a framework of therapeutic practice. I don't think it just works if somebody's going to sit there going, oh, yeah, that happened to me, that happened to me, But I do think it's very, very important that people have that kind of personal, relatable experience. Otherwise, I think you can end up down a bit of a route of just, sometimes, for example, CBT can be a little bit judgmental, I think, in terms of kind of, it can be a little bit, come on your feet kind of thing. Not really understanding that when you are in the depths of depression, you can barely get out of bed. I think for me, CBT is really, really good, but it's got to remember the context. I think CBT is good further along someone's recovery, when they're really trying to get moving. I think people need different therapeutic input where they are in their
I think it's such a good point. And it's something we've covered on a lot of the podcasts, is that not one thing suits all.
Absolutely.
Everyone's so unique and different.
Yeah.
And one therapy might work for some person, it might not for the other.
Completely, yeah.
What would your advice be if people are listening and they're thinking, actually, I need to talk to someone? How would they go about finding what would be a good trial for them, you know, in terms of a talking therapy?
It's a very, very good question. I mean, I think, you know, this is it's a very hard thing, but I think you need to try people out. You know, there are online directories, you know, it's one of these things where, you know, I think some people are attracted to me as a therapist because I'm a doctor of psychotherapeutic psychology. So they see that doctor thing and they think, I want somebody professional. Now, other people, you know, might want somebody who's not as kind of daunting as that, you know.
Well, Matty on our last podcast had a postman. His counsellor was a postman. He said it was the most incredible man. You know?
Exactly.
So yeah.
So for me, it's really about, and this is the difficult thing. I always say to people, you know, when I have an initial contact with a client, I'll always say, look, come along and meet me. If we don't get on, if you feel I'm not the right person, that's absolutely fine, and I'll actually help you find someone else. Brilliant. Because it's absolutely important that therapeutic relationship is there, and it's you know, that over any other qualifications is what's really important, that you feel comfortable, that you feel that they get you. And so really, you know, it's really interesting. There is a lot of research around this, but you know, go with your feelings. You know, if you're looking online, you know, there's lots of directories out there. If you're drawn by somebody's photograph, absolutely, that's absolutely fine. If they look like the sort of person that you think, oh, they look kind or they look whatever, go for that. But don't be afraid to say it doesn't feel right. You know, I think that's the difficult thing, because it's very, very hard to choose. And if it doesn't feel right, you know, have a session with somebody else and try because how are you meant to choose, really? You know, it's a very difficult thing for people to do, but I'm always pleased when people come to me and say, look, I'm going to have a session with you, but I'm going to try someone else, and I'm going to try someone else. And I always think that's brilliant. I mean, it's a bit expensive, unfortunately, but it's very, you know, if you're thinking sort of not necessarily long term, but if you're thinking, you know, that you want to stay with somebody, it's best to get the right person. Yeah.
What steps have you found have got people to that place of therapy? Because my point on this is we've had quite a few guests on the past who have said it just seemed like the furthest thing away from what I could do was go and talk to someone. You know, I had to do other steps before I got there, or we had someone who was openly talking about bereavement of losing a child and saying, for some people, going and talking is great. For me, I couldn't do that. I had to just steer clear from it, and I had to go in a total direction of full steam ahead, basically, you know. Any advice you'd give for anyone to explore those steps that would lead up to, you know, some correct therapy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, because I think it does differ for everybody. I think what I often find helpful, if people are thinking about it but scared about it, is enlist the help of somebody else. You know, that's absolutely fine. I do have people who kind of, you know, their first contact is a wife or a family member who says, you know, they're wondering whether it might be helpful. Most therapists will offer a free, 20-30 minute phone call just to chat with somebody. I would say it's not for everybody, but it's one of those things that kind of, you know, don't be afraid to try, because it can be, you might find that actually I didn't get a lot out of it. And of course I have people come to therapy and kind of feel, okay, it's not really for me. But then other people do really get surprised by what it is. It is one of those difficult things that's... it's often kind of very mystified, and people are a little bit scared, especially men. You know, one of these things is that it's actually quite scary for men to go and sit in a room and just talk for an hour. You know, it can be really hard. But I would just say try and take that plunge. And if you're not in a good place, absolutely enlist somebody else's help, you know, and you know, I as a therapist, and I'm pretty sure many other therapists, if somebody wants to come along with somebody for the first session, that's absolutely fine. You know, that's absolutely fine. So, I think that initial contact is the hardest thing. You know, try and make that initial contact, whether it's by email or a phone call, and then just try and take it from there. But it's not an easy thing to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing advice. Well, and I think one of the things again that we've kind of like spotted over doing this podcast is that men will talk to other men in certain situations. Like last month we had a men's walking group. Yeah, you know, a lot of over 55-year-old chaps who were maybe, you know, not too open about talking about their mental health over the last however many years, but now on a walk with other fellas, they're actually doing it, you know. And we've had like football therapy and lots of other amazing organisations on your doorstep that you are offloading to someone, and you are processing things just in a totally different way, in a totally different environment. So yeah, it's brilliant advice. And I think, if people do look at what's on their doorstep, they might find something that will work for them, or something where they can try, and then it might lead to a bit deeper of, then accessing talking therapies as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it is, it is a bit kind of explorative for people, because plenty of people work in different ways, and some people might get, this is kind of why in The Secret Happiness, I want to also talk about what different kind of therapies are out there, because, some people might want a more formalized kind of CBT therapy.
Yeah.
Some people might feel very uncomfortable with a kind of psychoanalytic, kind of very deep therapy, and some people might really benefit from that really kind of person-centered, just open thing. So it's really good to kind of know where your therapist is coming from. I think the other thing that's actually really important, I mean, what I have on my website and stuff is a frequently asked questions thing that hopefully, but actually one thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions of your therapist. Ask them how they work. Ask them, what sort of things do they do? What does it look like? And if you don't get the answers that you want, then maybe try somebody else, because a therapist should be able to answer these questions quite openly and honestly for you. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's absolutely fine to say, how's this going to work? What are we looking for? How do you get to how do we get to our goals? Do you set goals? What is it that you're looking for? These kind of things. So I think it's a good idea to definitely ask questions.
Definitely, it's great advice. I know you mentioned, was it a paper or your thesis that you wrote on men's mental health? So, in sort of your landscape of writing that to now, how are you seeing men's mental health in the UK? Is it becoming more, are people talking about it more, would you say?
Yeah. Oh, fun. Yeah, I mean, it's come on so much. So I did my doctoral thesis 2012, and in the last 10 years, it's really, really out there, as it should be, because the stats, well, I mean, don't need to tell you guys, the stats are terrible for male suicide. It is brilliant. It has changed a huge amount. It's strange what's kind of going out there in the world of social media, because my studies were around the traditional male gender role and its effects, and how people were affected by it, and how it would problematically affect men. They had these expectations of the kind of, you would be the breadwinner, you would be the strong mighty oak, you would be all these expectations that the traditional gender role had, and how that would affect men trying to achieve those and failing, but the problems of trying to achieve those, kind of validation through work, that kind of thing, and you miss out on family time and relationships and all these kind of things. So in many ways it's changed, but we've also seen the kind of rise of this kind of toxic masculinity as well, as a response to that, which really causes me a lot of kind of consternation, because I'm kind of like, we've come so far one way, and yet there seems to be a kind of recoil effect going on, and I don't really kind of comprehend it really. So it's a little bit strange, because that was when I was looking at that kind of fairly traditional toxic male role model, it was kind of, on one hand, we've got kind of people, we're kind of seeing it being phased out, and we're seeing people understand how bad that is for men, especially, I think, for me, what is so important is the awareness of emotions, is the awareness of kind of what we experience, because there's always been that thing of kind of, well, men don't do emotions, of anything. And what's interesting for me is, it was what I feel is really important, is an understanding of the whole emotional spectrum. Because a lot of the time when we talk about men's mental health, we're talking about sadness. They kind of say men should talk to each other, which it's kind of like you should express your sadness. But actually, a lot of the things that we should do is also be able to express our anger, our jealousy, our envy, our anxiety, all these other things, which I think we're a bit less comfortable with. Certainly those things that, but I think it's really important to recognise, certainly things like jealousy and these kind of things, which men tend not to feel but tend to act out on. So I think there's two strands really going on at the one side, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is about, whether it's this kind of people feel that we're emancipating ourselves by opening up to this other stuff, and so they're doubling down on the kind of masculinity thing. But it's massive. The landscape has massively changed in the last 10 years.
There's another study in there for you.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things when we wanted to create this podcast was just to give men a platform to be able to feel comfortable in talking. And we're so lucky that we have that, people like yourself coming on talking about their lived experience and just normalising that conversation. And we've had some incredible people, really brave men who come on and just tell their stories and things. And we do hope, just there's someone out there that it might relate to, and they're able to go, actually, that's me at the moment, and I can go and do this. I suppose where this is leading to is the old magic wand question. For yourself, if you could sort of change the landscape of men's mental health in this country, what things do you think we need to do? What could we improve on? You mentioned about talking on those emotions, but I'm thinking more on like a service level and things. What could we do to make it more friendly for men to access support?
I mean, I personally think that education around it is really important. Those things, as you said, that when I did the one-man show, the thing about the kind of the reason why we feel anxious, the caveman stuff. And for me, that evolutionary adaptiveness of emotions, of why they exist, of why jealousy exists in us right now, I think is really, really important, is the understanding of emotions. Because, I think, because what we tend to do, and I don't know, I work one-to-one, so I don't really know how men's groups kind of work. But for me, what I notice is that it's great for men to talk, but part of our male training is that we're not taught about emotions. We're absolutely not taught about emotions and what they are, how we experience them, what we should do with them. And I think that's for me that's really vital, because how do men talk about emotions? And one of the things that it's changed the landscape, but one of the things that I do notice with my male clients and other people is the kind of denial of emotions. So if I name something as jealousy, immediately the first response is, "Oh, I wasn't jealous," and it's kind of, but that's okay to feel jealous. It's absolutely okay. It's not okay to go stalking your ex-girlfriend, but it's okay to have the feeling. And for me, that educative aspect of kind of knowing, okay, there's a difference between the experience of an emotion and the expression, the behavioural expression of emotion. And to me, that kind of educative aspect of kind of teaching that stuff, which I actually think should be taught in schools, rather than kind of algebra that we never use. It's kind of like, actually, it would be far better for society if we're able to be taught, this is why you feel this, it's perfectly normal, but this is how you handle it, this is how you deal with it. I think that for me is, I guess on a service level, the education aspect, I think, is really, really important.
I absolutely love that. And I think, you're right. I've been to kind of like mental health first aid sessions. I've been into industries where, it's very male dominated to do, mental health awareness sessions. And we're kind of giving them a lot of education on what mental health is, what mental illness is, how to access services. But it's so important that about emotions, especially, as you're saying, just being aware that jealousy is okay. It's a natural thing. That could be such a life-changing thing for a lot of people.
Well, I think it is, because I think that, it's those emotions, it's our emotional responses to the life circumstances that really feeds in and becomes a problem. And I know that happened with me. It's so strange because, I'd always kind of considered myself fairly enlightened. I'd been through a lot. But when I had my breakdown in the third year of training, these kind of male tropes really came in, and I was sitting there, oh my God, I'm a failure, I'm letting my family down, because I had to drop out the course, and it was like, one of my friends going to think of me, oh my God, I'm never going to be earning. And it was amazing how quickly those kind of those male gender norms came in. And so I think it's really, really important to kind of to have that understanding, so we know that's what's going to happen, because it's those emotions that then feed in.
You become your own worst enemy, don't you?
Totally.
And as you say, you start to then make yourself feel guilty and about not achieving or having a struggle at that time as well.
Completely.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Amazing. In terms of going forward, what types of things have we got planned? Are you going to do more of the
I think
the tour?
more of the same, yeah. Actually, it's really interesting. I think I haven't really looked past this Boo Radleys tour. We've got this Boo Radleys tour, which is like full on 7 days.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those things where it's kind of like, I almost kind of want to get that out of the way and then think, okay, 2024.
Not that you're not enjoying it, you're loving it.
No,
Aren't you? You're loving
absolutely, yeah. Not saying get it
For
out
those
of the
that
way.
have got tickets to Bristol next week.
But mentally, that's the kind of end of the year for me. So 2024, we're gonna sit down and plan some more Boo Radley stuff. But I'm definitely going to be out doing the one-man show again.
Oh, brilliant!
Going to do that. Just trying to set things up at the moment. Trying to find. I did it at the Hope Street Theatre, which was fantastic, absolutely brilliant place, and it was perfect for it. So I kind of want to do that throughout next year as well. And continue with the work and continue with the work with MITC as well, the Music Industry Therapist Collective.
We've promoted them a few times on here, haven't we?
They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
As you say, it's not just the musicians that are on tour, is it? You know, roadies and photographers and anyone that's living that life on the road, and how impactful it can be, and it's a really important thing. But good luck with everything you're doing, especially the secret of happiness. I say I'm dying for my students to see it. So if you can bring it back to Liverpool, it'd be amazing. But thinking maybe as well about getting it out there in some kind of educational tool, because I think it'd be so valuable. For any nurse and allied health students, really. I think it gives a greater understanding of what's going on with people. Thanks so much for coming on. Honestly, we're absolutely been blown away by it, and I said cracking gig last night.
Excellent, thank you.
So thanks so much. After this short break, we are going to have a little chat amongst ourselves about the theme of happiness. So once again, thank you very much, Sice.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Okay, it's that part of the podcast where us, your lovely hosts, get to talk about the theme. And the theme this month, as we mentioned, is happiness. So as a mental health practitioner, I spend an awful lot of my time asking people who maybe have depression or low mood about what they are eating. I'd get some confused looks at times, and many people don't understand that mood and food are massively linked. So when it comes to diet, most people's concern involves weight loss, fitness, cardiac health. But what we eat affects more than our bodies. It also affects our brains. So see, I've got a link to me brain health here. So when I think of happiness on a mental health level, I instantly think of our old mate serotonin, because this is the feel-good neurotransmitter produced by nerve cells made from the essential amino acid tryptophan. So in short, serotonin helps transmit messages between nerves on a cellular level. Now, my usual brain health segment is focused on another area today. Although serotonin is well known as a brain neurotransmitter, it's estimated that about 90% of the body's serotonin is actually made in the gut, in the digestive tract. When you don't eat enough nutrient-rich foods, your body may lack vital vitamins and minerals, which may affect your energy, your mood, and your brain function. It's very well known that unhealthy eating patterns can cause mood swings. Blood sugar fluctuations and nutritional imbalances are often to blame for this. So without a steady source of fuel from the foods we eat, our mind and bodies don't function very well. So, Dean, I hear you all asking, what are the serotonin-boosting foods? Well, milk. Whole milk is one of the largest sources of tryptophan. Meats such as turkey, which we all know, we all get very sleepy at Christmas, don't we, when we're full of turkey. Things like chicken as well, eggs for protein, salmon and fish are excellent foods to increase serotonin, but as are soy products, tofu and soy milk, nuts and seeds, and I can see Dan's eating some pineapple at the moment, so well done, Dan. It's another serotonin-boosting food. Oats, dark chocolate as well, that's high in cacao, again, very good serotonin-boosting foods. So if you're prescribed antidepressants, there's numerous reports that state that they have a better effect on the body in beating depression if you're actually eating the right diet with it as well. Mental Health First Aid UK gives some great advice on some positive changes that you can make to improve your eating to support your mental health. Number one, they say, is eat at set intervals throughout the day. Then choose less refined sugars and eat more whole grain. Include protein at each meal. Eat a variety of foods, including omega-3 rich foods like oily fish. Reach and maintain a healthy weight. Drink plenty of fluids, especially water, and get regular exercise. I also want to highlight a book that I really love, and it's called The Food-Mood Connection, and it's by Dr. Naidu, and I've recommended this to lots of people over the years, and they find great benefits in just altering certain things for these mood-food changes that, again, will help boost things like serotonin. So yeah, happiness may be something we all strive for, and a lot of the time they may be focusing on external things like that promotion at work, your footy team beating your rivals, winning the lottery, or marrying the person of your dreams. But we have little control over these things, in all honesty. So start looking at what you can do for the small wins. Start by looking at your own mood and food, and hopefully with good health comes happy health. Conleth.
Yeah, and some of what you've actually just said, I will touch on it a little bit as well, but it's also that kind of thing about how to be happier. And there are several ways we can actually do it. Firstly, actually managing your stress levels, enjoying yourself. So, Ian, keep your hands above the desk, please. All right. Boosting that self-esteem, like, going back again to Maslow, you actually think of the things we actually have with Maslow, looking at the hierarchy of needs, having that self-esteem in your work and your family life, things like that. So important. As Dean mentioned, having that healthy lifestyle, limiting your alcohol intake is very, very important. Choosing that well-balanced diet, exercise, getting enough sleep. And the food will actually help with that. Talking and sharing, building your resilience. But the thing is, as Dean also mentioned there, it's just like life gets in the way. And it is actually trying to actually think, okay, well, what can I do to actually maybe forward think, plan, action, if at all possible. I was listening to Radio 4 there, was about 2 weeks ago on the Saturday Live programme. There was a fantastic, two really good guests on. Julia Bradbury was talking about her book, Work Yourself Happy, and finding your path to health through healing in nature. And she was a cancer victim. She was actually, was got through it, is in remission, being a cancer survivor, I should say. And she's come out the other end. But what she was talking about was like, she doesn't eat any sugars anymore, doesn't go down that route. And she says, okay, for breakfast this morning, I had steamed veg. And in the middle of it, Mark Watson, who was also their comedian, and he you can nearly hear his face grimace, like, whenever he's talking about going, what chances have people actually got to do that in life? You're thinking, yeah, this is what I need to do. I need to be healthy, happy. I need to have time to myself. But I need to get the 9:15 train to Nantwich, and I got to get my seat as well. So these things do get in the way. And it's whether we have control of these things or haven't got control. So we get the likes of the social determinants of health, Dahlgren and Whitehead's model, of which some people may know about. A lot of things get in the way of it. So it could be economic, could be environmental. Like you look at the floods at the minute we've been actually having just within the UK, and then you look at the issues going globally with regards to this. However, whenever I was researching this, it was actually quite interesting. I actually was able to find some sites, ones in particular, and it's www.actionforhappiness.org. So org, it's not a private company, things like that, whatever, and they're moving the people actually to help create a happier and kinder world. The work is actually involved in 10 keys to happier lifestyle. They actually provide daily actions so people can actually get through their apps and through the calendar. And actually this is Optimistic October. So basically you actually had every single day things you could do to actually help try and make yourself happy and other people happier as well. And it's actually used by millions of people across the world. They've got 250 different locations, and they've actually done studies with regards to it. So they've got randomized controlled trials. All of their courses would actually do and actually provide significant benefits of happiness and well-being. So we have those things actually in place as well. And, they provide happiness cafes, also looking at training workplaces as well. And also, it's been that time of year where the clocks have actually gone back. So, yes, we're coming into wintertime. Things can actually take into account. We actually have to think, seasonal depression is coming on. Is that actually going to affect us? What can we do around it? It's maybe making most of daylight. But are you a lark? Are you a night owl? All these things do come into account with it. But we also are also familiar with the saying, it's better to give than to receive. What might surprise you, this has actually been backed up by research. We've got 2014, 2018 studies around this, and those who are actually kind and compassionate experience clear benefits to our well-being and happiness. We may even live longer, And kindness also can actually reduce stress and improve emotional well-being. It can actually help others to improve their social networks and encourage us to be more active. That's from Pilmer's study regarding environmental volunteering and health outcomes. Also, it can also improve our self-esteem. 2014, in the article, It's Good to Be Good, actually says there is evidence that we help others. It can actually promote changes in the brain that is actually linked from happiness. And Dean's giving me evil looks here because he said his word, the brain, which he doesn't really like. He doesn't like people touching on those things. But I'm a big advocate of public health. I've been pushing with public health and palliative care, all these different things, public health within trolling. And one of the things actually just thinking about is an issue of having public health within kindness. Actually looking at those things, policies, procedures. We're all nurses here. We're actually governed by the NMC, Nursing Midwifery Council. We have rules and stipulations we actually have to give across. But through the Francis report we actually had within the Staffordshire inquiry, we came out with the 6 C's, and one of them is compassion. Having that compassion, just being out for people, looking out for people, and seeing what's going on. Why is Ian being sharp with us, what's going on there, and actually maybe find out what the problem is and trying to be there to help them. Okay? So speaking of sharpness, I'll pass you over to Ian.
Thank you, Conleth. So I don't know if people are aware, the last 10 years, the 20th of March since 2013 is actually designated as an annual, it's become an annual thing, as the International Day of Happiness. Now, I was aware that I wasn't sure when it was. I knew it was the 20th of March, but I didn't know how long that had actually been going or taking place. And it's interesting because when we asked Dr Sice earlier as regards how did he find any difference in terms of men's health and men's mental health, and he said probably from 2012-13 he's noticed that men are talking those things. So I just think it's interesting in terms of what the Day of Happiness marks is that for countries the success is judged by the happiness of people, and there's a consensus from within governments and internationally about how that can be measured and how that can be an objective for governments each year. What they've looked at is, how do we measure that? How do we? Conleth just mentioned a number of factors there in terms of, and so has Dean, in terms of whether it's your football team, it's your money and stuff like that. Well, that's one of them, not your football team, but certainly health and wealth are definitely part of that. Your income is part of that. But the other criteria about social support, so it's income, health, freedom, generosity, absence of corruption are being used to analyse and orientate us towards happiness in terms of a country. And Jeffrey Sachs has actually commented that the ultimate goal of politics and ethics should be human well-being, and actually a measure of that. And the way that we measure that currently is that we ask people, how happy are you, in terms of, and actually grade that. So I guess you start thinking of that and the criteria, and that's interesting. Where's the UK in the happy index? Anyone know? So countries for being happy, to not unhappy. So if I let you know that I think it's Lebanon, Afghanistan are right at the bottom, and I guess that's no surprise in terms of the war-torn countries, ravaged, or lots of sort of issues economically with that. So they're at the very bottom. So where's the UK, do you think?
I wouldn't say it was in the top 10, to be honest.
And you'd be right. 17th. So which country? We're 17th. So which country is top?
Oh, it has to be Ireland. We just love blood.
I bet it's Malta again. Malta.
Oh, Malta, yeah.
Yeah, Malta was the answer to that last time, wasn't it?
It's actually not, no. And there's no quiz and there's no prizes. Just to assure you that.
I go Denmark.
It's interesting. You've been near there with Denmark. It's actually Finland.
Yeah.
And they've remained in the top position for the six year. And the latest upcoming is Lithuania, is actually now in the top 20, has actually jumped up about 30 places since about 2017. And I think what's interesting about that, as I said, is that measures of health. And they, as I said, they ask people in terms of health is a big part of that. And obviously we're interested in this podcast about men's mental health. And a book that for me came out around that same time, 2009. It was published in the UK about 2010. Is this about positive thinking and how that links, I think, in terms of health? Because I think anecdotally, my experience has seen the more positive people are, the better that they will fare with their health. I guess it's a sort of almost a truism. Actually, the book that I want to just talk about is a book by Barbara Ehrenreich, who is an American author and activist. She died, unfortunately, a year or so ago. She's written a number of books. Is Nickel and Dimed is a brilliant book that she did exposing the sort of precarious work. So in America, but she writes it globally in terms of its implications. This Smile or Die, which came out in 2009 and 2010, its subtitle is How Positive Thinking Fueled America and the World. And although she's a journalist, she's actually a microbiologist by her trade. I think a dissertation that she actually did was on microphages. So she is someone that knows what she's talking about. She was actually diagnosed, and it's one of the chapters in the book, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she talks about this positive thinking. What she found when she's looked, and it's an evidence-based book, it looks at the studies, it looks at the research and evidence to back things up. What she found, it makes no difference whatsoever to your actual health in terms of how can it, she said, actually make a change in terms of your immune system, how you combat those things. And I just think that that's interesting in and of itself that she's actually talked about it. And then there's this whole focus for her experience about this emphasizing of actually of what she calls the pink ribbon culture that actually exists, certainly with her experience of actually being diagnosed with cancer. What she says from the outset, though, is that not that she's sort of sour in terms of, she says, I do not write this in a spirit of sourness or personal disappointment. She'd like to see more smiles, more laughter, more hugs, more happiness, and more joy. And she says that, her vision of utopia is about, she wants to see more comfort, that compassion that Conleth mentioned, security for people, better jobs, healthcare, more parties, festivities. So it is a utopia, but opportunities. She wants to see dancing in the streets. But what she says is that once our basic material needs are met, that life should be a perpetual celebration in which everyone has a talent to contribute. But we cannot levitate ourselves into that condition by wishing for it. We need to brace ourselves for struggle against the obstacles, the terrifying obstacles that we sometimes see against us. But both of our making imposed by the natural world, to overcome that, what we need is to recover from that delusion that is positive thinking. And the book, she actually, through her chapters, actually covers a lot of that issues in terms of that positive thinking and actually having, I guess, a realistic way, but an evidence base in terms of actually how we can support ourselves. And hopefully that's what this podcast is about, is actually looking at the constructive and looking at the real ways that we can challenge, to improve our mental health and our happiness as a result.
Nice one.
Wow. Thanks, Ian. How do I follow that? I always struggle to follow Ian because he's got very insightful gentleman, isn't he? Sorry, I've got to put my hands up now. We were chuckling away before because of Conleth's very rude comments about Ian having his hands up the table. So I'm just going to finish off really by talking a little bit about what makes me happy and what makes me tick. Talk about myself, why not? As I mentioned before, a couple of years ago, I had some problems with my mental health. I had a period of depression and some time off work, and accessed support and CBT, which we talked about earlier on with Dr Sice, seemed to work for me, sort of, reassessing my life, looking at things that could make me happy, things that could give me a boost with regards to my happiness. And the things that came out of this CBT was sort of to get back running, which is something that I did about 10 years ago and it really helped me then. And then also reading more, giving myself time to read, and both things obviously I've started doing a lot more of since obviously I had my period of depression, and the jogging in particular has become something that's very important to me, and the lads here are nodding because they know, because obviously I talk to them about that. And just going out 2 or 3 times a week, giving yourself that time, just that headspace. It's kind of really changed my whole outlook on life. And happiness is kind of like all things, really. It can be on a spectrum. So one day you might be extremely happy, and then another day you'll be okay, but you're not ecstatically happy. And it's keeping that equilibrium, isn't it, with regards to your happiness? And I think by doing something like jogging or giving yourself time, you're more likely to feel good about yourself and not be hard on yourself. And my main problem was I'm a people pleaser. I wanted to when I was practicing as a nurse, I wanted my patients to love me. I wanted my patients to feel safe in my company and be able to turn to me. But that's not always going to be the case. You can't always expect that from people, because they're unwell and etc. And with my students now, I'm a lecturer. I want the students to like me and things like that. And if I'm not pleasing people, then that used to impact on my happiness. And that's one thing that's changed in my life over the last couple of years, is that I don't have to please everybody. I can't please everybody. And that was a moment of realization as well with regards to my internal happiness. So I try not to take myself too seriously anymore. And I've always been a bit of a laugher and a joker, but I even more so now. I'm not internalizing these feelings, and I'm just a lot more happy in myself and my own body. And things like this podcast, it gives me a therapy of sorts, to just be myself, be open, talk about these things. So I'm just going to finish off with one last thing, because I've waffled enough. But one thing that I think of is when thinking about happiness is laughing therapy. So I think we should end this segment by all having a good laugh, which will really do Nat's head in. He does the sound, because it's going to send the
Away from the mic.
It's going to send the mics off. So we're going to finish this segment with all of us going to have a laugh. Okay. So
Nat's already laughing. Everton.
That's brilliant.
I feel happy.
Thank you very much.
Dan.
Nice way to finish. I just want to as well plug Dan. This month has ran a minimum of 5k every single day, and he's been doing this for a lot of the mental health charities that we've had on the podcast. So if you want to sponsor Dan, go on to any of our Manhug social media, and you'll see that we are retweeting his link where you can go on. From me, Conleth, and Ian, we just want to say well done. And it's been an amazing thing that you've done. It's great for yourself, but also the impact that you're having on these local communities as well, in terms of the valuable resources that they'll get from your donation. So well done, mate. We're really proud of you. We're going to have a very short break, and then we're going to be down by the lake. Yes, you heard it right. We're going to be down by the lake, and we're going to be with Mark from the mental health project Fishing the Mind.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Okay, it's that part of the podcast now where we shine a spotlight on a local project within the city region that aims to promote things that are beneficial for men's mental health. And this is a first for us. You might be able to hear the ducks in the background, but we're out of the studio and we are here in lovely Greenbank Park in Liverpool, and I'm joined by Mark Myers, and Mark runs an amazing project. So Mark, thanks very much for joining us.
You know what, thank you very much for inviting me, mate.
What a lovely location.
It really is. Yeah, it's a lovely little park, and we hold a few events here now. It's just become a kind of local now.
Yeah. So it's Fishing the Mind, isn't it?
It's called Fishing the Mind. Yeah, we started early 2021, I think it was. Okay. Not long after my nan passed away. Right. So we'll go into that a bit more detail. Yeah. That's kind of where it started, but she passed away in 2020, August time, round about that time. So after it settled down a bit, you know, I started thinking, what can I do with myself? And that's where fishing the mind came about.
Amazing. So did you use fishing yourself as just a way to just get out and de-stress and relax? Or how was it beneficial for yourself?
Well, I never used to fish when I was a kid.
Right.
So it's only the last, I'd say, about five years now.
Yeah.
It's gone quite quick, to be fair. I never used to fish when I was a kid, like I say, but once I lost my nan, I don't know what it was about fishing. It got me out. It got me focused. Instead of sitting there feeling depressed, you know, I'll be totally honest. When I lost her, I hit depression. I was really, really bad. Didn't know what to do with myself. I'd lost the world, really. I spent a lot of time with my nan. I used to live with her when I was a kid, growing up. So it was very, very difficult. I thought I'd lost the world.
Yeah.
So I was out fishing one day when I got a phone call. Basically, this is how it started.
Nice.
I was out fishing in, I can't think, Culcheth, what was it called? Partridge Lakes.
Right.
And got a phone call to say she wasn't well. We knew she wasn't well, but this was the phone call kind of thing. So I sat with my best mate, John. He looked across, he could see I was a bit, you know, he looked upset. You know, he come over and said, you know, "You're okay?" I said, "Well, I've just had a phone call to say, you know, she's not good, mate. She's really, really ill." And this was the time of COVID as well.
Right.
It wasn't COVID which affected me nan. It was just old age, health, pacemaker. She had a pacemaker, epilepsy. I say she had everything, really. She had a medication for everything. So it was one of them. So I really, my head went. I was sat by the lake, you know, tears running down my face, and I couldn't hold it in. I was choked up. He said to me, "Why don't you get in the van and just scream, you know, get it out your system," kind of thing. So next minute, the alarm went on the fishing rod. So I sort of like wiped the tears away. I said, "You know, get the net quick." So that split second, you know, it just switched my mind from, obviously not away from my nan and the thought of, you know, she's really ill and, you know, what's going on, but it was a major distraction from everything. So it made me, you know, focus on catching that fish and landing it. So that's kind of how I got into the fishing, really. It just done something to me. You know, it got me out. It got me into the fresh air. You know, you can hear the ducks now and the geese, whatever they are. So yeah, it's just you're sitting there and you just all your cares in the world go away for me.
It's amazing to hear, you know, such a personal story from like yourself of you know, struggling with depression and then utilising fishing as a means of distraction and relaxation. Yeah. How did you then go think, actually this can help other people and I'll put it out there?
So after a real battle with depression, I was going to, like, I'm not ashamed to say it, I was going to the doctors. I went to a hospital, and I thought, why am I here? You know, why is my life turned like this? Why am I in this position? I've got everything I want. I've got a family. I've got a nice car. I've got a nice house. I've got a good job. But you can have as much money and, you know, happiness in that sense. But when you feel depression and you've lost people and you realise they're never going to come back, you know, that's when the memories flood in. It's difficult to speak about, but even just standing here now in the park, speaking to, you know, yourselves I've never met before, and I can open up and talk about it. It's really upsetting, but I've got that strength now to speak about it. So I use fishing as like a coping strategy. You know, it's a therapy for me now. No one, you know, needs to be taking all this medication sometimes. You know, I mean, medication's there to help you get back on track. It's not, you know, a fix kind of thing. So what I'm trying to do is get people away from that, you know, going to the doctors, you know, off sick, long-term sickness, you know, keep on that path of working and stuff, and use fishing as a coping strategy, you know, technique. I see that as a therapy now. It gets me out. I've come out with my little girl and me missus as well. So
how are you seeing, you know, with Fishing the Mind now, obviously you're getting lots of other people who are joining in and participating, and a lot of them have probably got similar backgrounds or they've struggled with their mental health, you know, due to different factors. How are you seeing that, you know, fishing and being together? How's that helping other people?
It's brilliant. Some people say to me, like, what do I get out of doing this? it's not a business. I can categorically tell you it is not a business. Some people think, what's this all about? You know, it's not a business.
Yeah.
It's I get satisfaction out of seeing people catching fish in the local park.
Yeah.
There's people who've, there's really deep stories. There's people who've lost their partners to suicide, and it's really, really deep conversations we have in the background. So when people, you get the odd people thinking it is business and stuff, it's totally not. I can't stress that anymore, kind of thing. So what I get out of it is satisfaction of people seeing, catching the fish and having a good chat on the bank, and we have a coffee, we have a bacon butty, and it's brilliant.
Amazing. We've had episodes over the last couple of months where we've touched on things like community and connectiveness and bringing people together. How powerful is that as well, where people are able to come and learn new skills, but to also form these friendships, because outside of the fishing, I'm sure people meet each other and the rest of it,
So I'm not really up to scratch on like my social media and stuff. So over the last, say, 3 years now, I've become, not too bad on it now. But I use it in the right way. I don't have all the so-called trolls and all this rubbish. We use it for the right reasons. We have a Facebook group page now, which is touching nearly 5,000 people now, just in a couple of years. There's people who are sat in the house, social anxiety, they're struggling to get out the house, they're sitting in the flats, they've split up with the partners, they don't see the kids anymore, so there's people who are really, really struggling, sat at home. There's older people as well who can't get out, but they use our group pages as it's a community. We've built such a community now, and people get involved with the Facebook group page. Twitter as well is, I think, a really good one. I've met so many nice people like yourself, Chris Kirkland. I've met so many people who do so much around the city as well, and it's a real eye opener as well to know that there is support out there.
That's so true, and I think when you have a collective interest in something, it doesn't matter what the actual hobby or sport or anything is, bringing people together. It's the effects afterwards as well, isn't it? A massive. In terms of fishing, I wanted to get you on this podcast because without fishing myself, I would have burnt out many a time. My mum, my wife, anyone, whenever they see I'm stressed, they go, right, go to the lake, go fishing. They know when to send me to the water, because for me, as a kid who was very hyperactive, it was the only thing I could sit still. And now as someone who's always on the go, it's one of the only things where I notice I'm actually being mindful. You hear of mindfulness all the time, don't you? But watching a float or watching your rod tip, you're actively focusing on the second rather than your mind worrying about things that are out of control.
So what we spoke about before when we had our little walk around the park, I was saying about, busy with work and family life and having a 6-year-old, Halloween and all the rest of it going on, Christmas. So when I come to the park, sometimes I'll come after work and I'll sit under the tree just over there with the fishing rod, and it could be lashing down, it could be, as long as I'm sheltered there, it's peaceful, and it brings me back down to earth. I've just been in work, and it's a fast-paced world, and everyone's hectic and racing around on the roads and stuff, but it brings me back down to earth, and just sitting by the lake now, it's just...
That's such a lovely term. It brings you back down to earth. It's so true, isn't it? And I think I use the term the natural health service or ecotherapy, whatever it is you want. But you're right. It's being in a green space, listening to nature. It's just incredible, isn't it?
Things pass you by. You don't see things where if you're sat here now, you can hear things like you can hear it now. You can hear the trees, the ducks, and as soft as it sounds, it does a lot for you. And I'm not one of these green, people, but I've become that. I like to sit by the parks now and and fish, and not only that, we spoke about meeting people as well. I'll be sat here and God knows how many people will walk past and go, all right, Mark, you're okay. Of course, what's happening? What's it fishing like? And
with that as well, you organise a lot of these socials, don't you?
We do social events.
So tell us a little bit about those then.
Yeah, so that'll fit in nicely now. So we meet people in the parks, but also with the Facebook group pages, we do social events. So it can be, for instance, Greenbank Park, Sefton Park, Calderstones, anywhere really. But we also go to we go to fisheries. So we go to the likes of Hailston Hall Fishery, Mere Lane Fishery, but we're trying to, go a bit further afield. But obviously, you know, work commitments,
Yeah.
you know, family life, like I say. I'd love to take it on full time, perhaps maybe in the future, we don't know, but it's going in the right direction. We've built the foundations now. So going back to the socials, what we do is we organise the lake, pay for the lake and stuff, and obviously people don't want people to pay for them. You know, we get people who are struggling, but they're not struggling with money, if that makes sense. You know, they have their equipment and stuff, but we have equipment and bait, and it's all free. You know, and I can also get a rod.
That's one of the
waiver.
things, isn't it, with fishing? You know, it's the most popular sport in the UK, but it's not cheap. You know, you have to pay your licence, your bait.
That's it.
Often you'll have to pay for wherever you're fishing as well, don't you? So it's great that you're thinking around that.
So I've over the last couple of years, I've been really trying to target that. I want to make everything free. So I've got all the equipment now. I've got bait. I mean, you can go and get some sweet corn for like a pound or something, a big bag of sweet corn. So bait's not really a problem, but all that's free. But one thing I wanted to tackle was pardon the pun, one thing I wanted to tackle was the rod licence, you know, because it can be expensive for some people, you know, £40 a year, 30, whatever the prices are, you know. So I've been speaking with Environmental Agency and the Angling Trust, and they've actually, I feel like I've beat the system kind of thing, where they can do a rod waiver licence as a worthy cause licence. Wow. So anyone who wants to come on our social events who's not fished before, I can get the licence as well, you know, for them. So there's no fees or nothing like that. So I'm trying to make everything as free as possible.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, I think everything that you do in terms of, you know, trying to bring people together, using, you know, as I say, the Natural Health Service in terms of benefits for people's mental health, I think it's incredible. So if anyone's listening, they've maybe never fished before, or they just want to kind of come and see what it's all about, how would they get involved?
I mean, at the moment, the best way to do it is to get involved with like the social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook group page.
How would you find them?
You just search @Fishing the Mind and it'll come up everywhere. Even put it on Google, you know, you'll see my face come up. And I don't really, you know, I want my face to be seen so that people know who I am for the right reasons, you know, so they can approach me and, you know, they can see that, you know, I'm a friendly person, you know, all that good stuff.
We can vouch for that as well. So it's @Fishing the Mind. So if you do a search for that, and then, as Mark says, you know, get involved in sort of like the Facebook or the Instagram, because obviously we're hitting the cold season now, so there won't be too much fishing during the winter. But you know, it's a good way of getting to meet people prior to spring and when the rods will come back out, isn't it, Mark? Really,
you meet a lot of like-minded people, which is good, and it is a real community. I just quickly wanted to touch on, we've also got our own defibrillator as well.
Oh, excellent.
So I won some funding for that through doing a pitch that I had to do, and I had to stand up and, you know, pitch my, you know, project, and we ended up winning it. So
well, hopefully you never have to use that.
Well, we want it to collect dust, really. We don't want to don't want to be using stuff like that, but I want people to feel comfortable and relaxed, and, you know, that's what it's about, really.
Amazing.
So
I can't sing the praises enough. So Fishing the Mind, get involved in the socials, share it with like-minded people. If you're in the city region and, you know, you're part of a community group, please share and promote it, because, you know, we know that social prescribe, we know the benefits of it, but also this connectiveness through community. And I think the more people that get involved in it, it's going to grow and grow, isn't it? Really, Mark?
It's brilliant. Each year it's going up by thousands, and it's really good to see. That's where I get my satisfaction from. Like it's really good. It helps me helping others as well.
That's it.
So
we've touched on that as well, how beneficial that is.
It gets me out as well. It's good. Amazing. I really love it, you know.
Mark, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Obviously, we can't thank you enough. So for those, again, the last big plug, Fishing the Mind, have a look, follow them on all of the social media, and share it as far as wide as you can, really. Thanks so much for coming on, Mark.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you or anybody else you know is struggling with their mental health, visit hubofhope.co.uk or download the app today and find local and national mental health support.
Please make sure that you follow us on Twitter. It's @TheManHug. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next month.